Week 3 of the Pantry Challenge was cold and gloomy. Winter has just completely set in. The snow may be gone, but it's like an iceberg out there. It's really cold for Tennessee. So this was a perfect week to revisit some of our warm and cozy comfort foods that we used to have all the time and frankly haven't had in a very long time because I didn't have what I needed to fit them into the way we were eating. So I do now, and so we're going to revisit those, and then we're going to find some new ones that I'm really excited to bring you along. So let's jump right in. All right, on to the next one, and this one I'm going to tell you is so exciting to me because I haven't made it in, well, since before 2012. How about that? That's been a long time. I'm going to make mac and cheese. As a Southern girl, this is so exciting to me because I grew up having mac and cheese multiple times a week. So we had mac and cheese and rice and gravy, and those were our staples at several meals each and every week. So back in 2012, I learned that it was dairy that was causing me all kinds of issues, and so I gave up dairy completely and was just able to bring back goat's milk dairy and sheep's milk dairy, or A2 dairy, here in the past, I don't know how long it's been, 12 to 18 months or so. But until that, all that time, 12 years, I think, I was without dairy. So mac and cheese was not happening clearly for that. So even though I could bring dairy in this past year and a half, because I've been keto and really not having a good keto noodle that I like, it just wasn't going to happen. Mac and cheese just was not going to be in the cards. Now I have a keto noodle that I'm actually just loving. It's such a normal noodle and it is such a blessing to have. It's, I guess maybe keto, it's not. It's probably low carb rather than keto for many. It's probably 7 grams of carbs per serving. So that fits in fine with the way I eat, but it may not fit with everybody. But I love it. And so now I can have mac and cheese again, and I'm so excited. So I made my little roux. I used a little teaspoon of arrowroot and it thickened up beautifully. And then I add a little bit of some creamy goat cheese, and now I'm adding some other goat's milk cheeses. I think I used Monterey Jack and cheddar. I make a nice creamy white cheese sauce and then pour those noodles in, get them mixed up, and then top it with even more cheese. It was so decadent, I can't even tell you. And then I just popped it in the oven for maybe 45 minutes or so. All right, so now we'll move on to the meat portion of this meal, and I'm going to have some pulled pork. I always keep pulled pork on the shelf. I don't go through it nearly as often as I do like any kind of beef or chicken or hamburger or anything like that. But I love having it on the shelf because making it fresh is always a monumental task. You know, number one, they're really huge pieces of meat, so you really have to commit to like a week or so of eating pulled pork. And I love it once, but I don't necessarily want it 4 times in a week. So, and then I don't want all the mess and the cleanup. And anyway, this is such a great way to meal prep pulled pork. In fact, that's probably one of the initial things that I fell in love with about canning these individual meats, is it was just great meal prep. Just perfect. So much of the work and the mess was done for me. So there's my mac and cheese looking absolutely fantastic. So I'm just gonna heat up this pork a little bit, dry it out a little bit, and then I'm gonna add some barbecue sauce. Now I like my barbecue pork to be, I guess, on the drier side. I don't want it swimming in sauce. So I kind of want to coat it really well and then let that kind of cook in a little bit. And then I'll serve it up with just a little more barbecue sauce on the top. I also have left over from last week a little bit of a bagged, I think it was like a broccoli salad that is a delicious salad. So I just mixed up the rest of that. And this dinner, the pulled barbecue pork, the mac and cheese, and the broccoli salad, it was so great. It was so reminiscent of my childhood. So I was really happy. with this one. In fact, you'll see that this one, the next dinner, and the dinner after that, David and I cannot decide which is our favorite between those 3 dinners. All right, as I mentioned, next up was another favorite of the week. I'm going to make a meatloaf. So I pulled out from the freezer a pound of pork and a pound of ground beef. And I'm going to get that mixed up. Now, being keto for the last, I don't know, off and on for the past few years, when you make a meatloaf, you have a couple of options. You can use almond flour, you can use ground up pork rinds, or you can just kind of ignore it altogether. And while it makes a meatloaf that tastes like meatloaf, it's kind of like a lead brick. Basically, it is not a light in texture meatloaf. It becomes very, very dense. So I'm going to get to solve that today, and I'm really excited at the results that I got out of this. So first thing I'm going to do is add some onion and an egg. I used a little bit of tomato paste in there. And then I opened a jar of maple onion jam last week, and I'm going to add that to the meatloaf. And that was such a good decision. Oh my goodness. I've never done this before. This was an excellent addition to a meatloaf. So if you have some maple onion jam sitting on your shelf, try it in a meatloaf. And if you haven't made maple onion jam, you ought to go back and make that with me. I'm going to do it again this summer because I'm almost out. Just one of my all-time favorites. I made probably 24 jars of it 2 years ago or a year and a half ago. I just love it. Total winner. So I'm going to do salt, pepper, Worcestershire. I'm going to use some freeze-dried garlic that I did earlier this year. And I'll give it a little mix. And then I'll add those breadcrumbs I found. So last week I introduced you to a bagel, a low-carb bagel, keto bagel, that I think is terrible. It's really, it has a bad taste, bad aftertaste. So last week I chopped it up and I turned it into bread pudding, and it was great. Well, this week I chopped it up and I dried it out in the oven and turned it into breadcrumbs for my meatloaf. And it was perfect. Absolutely perfect. There was no weird aftertaste from the bagel. There was no anything. It just made it, I don't know, made it light. It made it like a meatloaf should be. And it's been a long time since I've had a meatloaf that was a meatloaf like it should be. And so that was really exciting to me. So I have 2 pounds of meat in here and all these breadcrumbs, and I'm going to stuff it all into this dish. So I'm going to make sure I put it on a tray in case it decides to bubble over in the oven. But I'm going to pop it in at 350 for about an hour, and you'll see I'll pull it out halfway through for something special to add to it. I'm also going to go ahead and pop in the rest of the mac and cheese. Look at that. Somebody's been eating out of my dish of mac and cheese since I put it in the refrigerator. I wonder who that is. All right, now here we are halfway through. I am going to add some tomato jam to the top of this. So 2 years ago, I think I made this tomato jam. I think this is my last jar. I may have one left in my pantry up here. This stuff is so tasty. I know people like ketchup. I'm not a huge ketchup fan. In fact, I really don't much like ketchup at all. But this stuff is so good. It's kind of somewhere between a ketchup and a barbecue sauce without the smokiness. It's really delicious. So this is absolutely going on my list of things I need to make some more of this summer. So I'm going to pop this back in the oven for the last 30 minutes or so of its cook time. And then we'll be ready for another wonderful dinner. Okay, the mac and cheese is bubbly and all done. The meatloaf is looking great. It's all done. Quick check of the temperature, and then I'm going to let it sit for, maybe 10 minutes just to kind of pull itself together before I cut into it. So now I needed a vegetable for this one. So I ran downstairs because I didn't have anything left in the fridge. I ran downstairs and harvested an entire bowl of microgreens. And I have, this has been a really productive batch of microgreens I have down there. I don't have that many containers of them going, but what I do have is really going crazy. So that entire bowl is microgreens. So this makes a wonderful health-packed little salad here. So I just did it in a super light dressing because microgreens can't really take a heavy dressing. They just get too weighted down. But this was just perfect because the rest of the meal was really heavy and really delicious. All right, a little more baking. Now, I'm not a big baker, but I am having all kinds of fun playing with this book. This is a paleo baking book. I bought it for myself for my birthday a few weeks ago. And I've made, I think, 4 recipes from it now and loved them all. This one in particular is really, really tasty. Butter pecan cookies. Butter pecan is like one of my favorite flavors. As a kid, if there was no chocolate something or other ice cream available, I was always wanting butter pecan or butter brickle. Just two things that always sit really well with me. So these were fun to try. I'd never had butter pecan cookies of any keto, non-keto variety, whatever. And these were terrific. I had everything I needed for this. You see, I used some butter flavored coconut oil. This book is paleo, so they don't use dairy. They would use ghee, but my ghee kind of smelled off, so I went ahead and used the buttery flavored coconut oil, and it worked out perfectly. But butter would be absolutely fine to use as well. So I used allulose. I made a few substitutions, of course, because hers is not keto. So I used allulose, and then I think everything else I did exactly the same as she suggested. A little vanilla, a little bit of egg, almond flavoring, which was just beautiful in this, a little bit of maple flavoring, and stevia, maple flavored stevia, I guess it is. And an egg, and then I'll get my dry ingredients together, which will be almond flour, baking soda, salt. We'll mix all those together and then add the pecans. And I did not think this was going to come together. I really didn't think there was going to be enough liquid in this to get it together. It took a little bit of muscle, but it was perfect. It was exactly as it should have been. So we have now finished these cookies. I think it took us 2 days. Could have been 3, but I don't know. I think it may have been 2 days and we were done with these cookies. They were really great. Okay, the next meal. This is also one of the contenders for favorite meals of the week. This is the second head of cauliflower that I had from week 1, still in great shape, thankfully. So instead of roasting it as florets this week, I'm going to turn it into a cauliflower mash. If you have not done cauliflower mash, it's really super easy. So I'm just going to chop it up and get it ready for the steamer. And you're just going to steam it until it's fork tender, and then we will move on from there. So the other thing we have for dinner tonight is leftover meatloaf, which is always a big hit with me. So I was excited about that. But I wanted to dress this up a little bit so it was slightly different from last night. So I'm going to make some onion gravy as well. Years ago, I made French onion soup, and we used to eat it as, or David used to eat it as French onion soup with a big piece of French bread, crouton, and, you know, all kinds of cheese melted over the top and whatever. And then over the years, as our diet changed, we stopped eating French onion soup the way it should be eaten. So the last batch of French onion soup I made just kind of sat there until one day I realized, wow, what a great gravy I bet that's going to make. So I've been using it to make gravy. I'm now almost out. I think I have 2 jars left downstairs. And I might actually make some more this year. We don't eat a lot of gravy, but I tell you, it is really nice to have that on hand whenever I get the urge to make something that requires gravy or would be better with gravy. And you know, David would say, well, what isn't better with gravy? So maybe I need to be using it more often. But I just throw a little bit of butter in the pan. I'm going to use arrowroot again, just a tiny little bit. So I'm just adding a few carbs for those of you paying attention to your carbs. And then I'm going to pour in the French onion soup. And it literally, it's ready to go in, I don't know, 4 or 5 minutes. It'll thicken up and be a delicious gravy. So now that the cauliflower is ready, and you know, as soon as you can stick a fork in there and it's tender, it's good to go. So I put some butter in the bottom of the blender so that that goes ahead and melts and can get all through the cauliflower. And then I'm going to use some full-fat coconut milk and some salt and pepper, but use whatever your version of dairy is in this, and just blend the heck out of it until it's smooth. And it turns out just great. It's a terrific substitute for mashed potatoes. It doesn't taste exactly like mashed potatoes, obviously, but I think it's really tasty. I mean, just as a cauliflower mash, I just think it is really tasty. So we enjoy this. And of course, it's really good with the onion gravy on top. So now, because we were having our vegetable that looked like a starch, I didn't bother with another veggie for this one. It was just terrific as is, with the meatloaf, the gravy, and the cauliflower mash. All right, here comes another one. This is, again, one I haven't made in a while. I don't necessarily know why I haven't made it in a while, but it's a good one. We love it, and it's super easy. So I did make another run to the store today, and I bought some lettuce and what else did I get? Oh, tomatoes. These are Campari tomatoes, and somebody the other day on something I was watching had said, you know, how wonderful they were. I thought, I don't know. You know, I haven't bought a tomato from the grocery store in a long time because they're just not the same. And you know, if you grow your own tomatoes, it's hard to buy one from the grocery store and expect it to really taste the way a tomato should. So anyway, she said these were great. So I thought, all right, well, I'll buy some tomatoes. Well, I won't do that again. I did not think they were great. They really had like no flavor at all. I'll do my best to use them up, but I was not impressed. So anyway, on to the salmon cakes. I'm using the rest of those breadcrumbs that I used for the meatloaf the other night. I had some left over, so I'm going to chop those up really fine so I can put them in the salmon cakes. So I'm going to use 2 cans of salmon. This is just salmon from Costco. Use a bunch of seasonings, some freeze-dried garlic. I'm going to use a little paprika. I'm going to use some cayenne, salt and pepper. I think, cilantro. And then I'm going to dice up some green onions to put those in there. I have a little bit of leftover pepper from the other night, and I'm going to dice that up and put it in there as well. And I was trying to remember how to make these as I was going through, and I added the egg and I added all the seasonings, and I thought, you know what? This texture is not quite right. Oh, I added capers too. I love capers. I have this gigantic thing of capers from Costco that I'm still trying to work through. As much as I love them, I don't know why I can't get through this jar, but it's because you only use a little bit at a time, I guess. But anyway, I realized that I had forgotten the mayonnaise. I always put mayonnaise in my salmon cakes or crab cakes or whatever it is I'm making. And generally speaking, I like to add some horseradish too. So I had to run go get those. And then it all came together. So once you get this all mixed up, it needs to be popped back in the fridge. If you can leave it in there for 3 or 4 hours, that's ideal. I think for me, it was in there for about 45 minutes. And I just had to get on with dinner. So the other thing I want to do tonight, someone had asked me maybe a couple of months ago what I thought of the French fries that I canned without citric acid. I did that this past summer. It was somebody else's recipe I was trying. Had not tried these fries yet because, of course, of the carbs, but I thought, well, I'll pull them out during the challenge and we'll see. So this is the first jar I'm opening. They look great on the outside. I had assumed that there would be more browning, but I'm not seeing it. I think these really look good. You'll see when I pull one out individually. Everything looks terrific about this jar. Everything terrific about the fries. And they're just beautiful. The only thing I will say is that normally I make my fries with russet potatoes. Well, I can't grow russet potatoes. So I just made them with, I think these are Elbas, or I don't know what these were. I grew 3 different varieties last year, and these are not the kind I would prefer as fries because they don't have that same texture on the inside. That's a potato issue. It's not a factor of not having citric acid in how I can them. But these crisp up just beautifully. I just popped them in the air fryer for about 10 minutes. I'm going to spritz them with a little bit of oil and some salt, pop them in, and I think I took the temperature up to like 425 for about 10 minutes, kind of shook them halfway through, and they turned out beautifully. So that no citric acid method was really easy. It was much easier than soaking and everything. So I'm kind of a fan. I think if I do some more fries this year, I'm not sure I will because we're not really going through them right now as I'm trying to watch those carbs. But if I do, I will probably use the same method again. All right, so now I'm just going to make a little simple little salad, and it turns out David just thought it was a garnish, and so he didn't eat it. I'm like, why didn't you eat your salad? He said, oh, I thought it was a garnish. So anyway, apparently I need to do a little more if I'm going to call something a salad than just put some leaves and a tomato and just a little bit of dressing on the plate. I thought that was pretty funny. Okay, so this mixture has been in the fridge now for 45 minutes. I'm just going to make some little patties. 2 cans of salmon made 5 patties for us, which is perfect. David is a 3 patty guy, and I do just fine with 2 patties. So this worked out great, and then I'm going to fry these up in some avocado oil. And these will be done by the time the fries are done. Next up is this morning's breakfast. As I was looking for the drawer of things I needed to use up in the fridge, I realized that I had the other half of that piece of kielbasa that I used, I think it was last week, in a dinner, so that's still in there. So I used just half of that, and I still have another half of kielbasa I need to get through. And I pulled out a bag of frozen peppers and onions from last year's garden and sliced up the kielbasa, and then I'm going to serve it with some scrambled eggs. And because I haven't grated any cheese in the last couple of days, I'm going to grate some cheese and put that in my eggs, and we'll just call it a sausage and pepper egg scramble. So this was delicious, lots of great protein, lots of great flavor. Nice way to start the day. So that wraps us up for week 3 of the Pantry Challenge. I know that your week was just as delicious as ours was. I'm so glad to have all these wonderful new things on the menu. So let's look forward to next week. But in the meantime, if you're looking for even more inspiration and you haven't seen my videos from weeks 1 and 2, I'll put those on the screen right here. So go take a look, and I will see you next week. Have a wonderful one. Bye-bye.